John 19 verse 12. From then on, Pilate sought to release him, but the Jews cried out, "If you release this man, you are not Caesar's friend. Everyone who makes himself the king opposes Caesar." Okay, so in the other parts, seemingly, it was not in the forefront of Pilate's mind yet to try and get Jesus released. Maybe he was just trying to play the game yet. It was not like, more the reason by doing this, or the reason he knew these guys wanted this to happen, and he thought that maybe if then they would be, or he was just playing along with them. Okay, but now when he heard this said, now it's a different, totally different Pilate. Now he is clearly out there to try and get Jesus released. So everything that's pushing him forward, all his actions are now coming from this point. I'm trying to get this Jesus released. Okay? But no, they were not going to have any of this. They said, if you release this man, you are not Caesar's friend. Okay, so they play the political game here. So if you're going to release this guy, then you're not a friend of Caesar. Jews saying this, right? These people they hated the Romans. They did not want the Romans over them. They waited for the Messiah who will overthrow the Romans. Pilate knew this, right? This was who they were. And now they're speaking of, if you release him, you're not a friend of Caesar. And now, sure, he just spoke about the fact that Jesus said, you don't have any power if not from above. And he knew that this power comes from Caesar. So now, if the story is going to get back to Caesar ultimately, that Pilate did this, and then therefore he's not a friend of Caesar, then he will be recalled, he will lose everything, like they were afraid ultimately of all of this, right? That was a stab, a big stab. I mean, in Pilate, could he do anything really after all of this? Is there a way out of this at all now? Do you damn, don't you damn, doesn't matter what. If he lets Jesus go and does the right thing, they might go up to Pilate and they inform him, and then he might be recalled and he will die. So it's like, will one man die for the nation, or will the nation die for one man? Okay, Pilate, will you die for this guy? Is it just a Jew, maybe mad at that, or will you allow him to die ultimately for you? Good question. In both cases it's prophetic. In both cases none of the people really understood what is going on. But ultimately Jesus did die for them. Okay, so in the last words, everyone who makes himself a king opposes Caesar. Okay, so that is what they're waiting for. They're waiting for one from the line of David who will proclaim to be the king of the Jews. This is what they are waiting for. This is what they as a nation has been living for always. This is what they've been fighting for. This is what they've been pushing for. This is what who the Messiah will ultimately be. And here they're like, no, everyone makes himself a king, can't be a friend of Caesar. So you say you agree with Jesus and he makes himself the king, you can't be a friend of Caesar. You know your days are numbered. You are out of here. You're gone. You're dead. You lose everything. Oh, man, but just the words. They hated Jesus that much that they were willing to sacrifice absolutely everything their whole history was built upon. Everything, their whole history was built upon the coming of the Messiah. So one will set them free. And now they are willing to destroy all of that. It shows how deep their hatred for Jesus was. They were willing to destroy everything, just to get rid. They didn't care of the 2,000 year history at all. They just cared about themselves. This is ultimately what's about. So the first readers will again see this. When they recall this, when they're thrown in the face with this, when they're slapped in the face, with the ice and water thrown over them, they're like, yeah, we sacrificed absolutely everything that we stand for, that we stood for, that our forefathers lived for. So as to get rid of Jesus, was it the right thing to do? You need to repent. Verse 13. So when Pilate heard these words, he brought Jesus out and sat down on the judgment seat at a place called the Stone Pavement, and in Aramaic, Gabbatha. Okay, so after hearing these words, he had to make the choice. It's either Jesus or him. And he made his choice. It's Jesus. Right? Like they made their choice. He made his choice. He wasn't interested in the truth. He wasn't interested in the fact that Jesus is not guilty. He could have stood up. He could have explained himself to Caesar. Right? No. So he goes out, he went out, he sat down on this judgment seat. And it's the stone pavement in Aramaic is Gabbatha. So maybe, it shows, it foreshadows already. This is now a place of judgment. It's going to happen. The stamp on his death is there. That's just that. That's why he's coming out here. Okay, this is when you know the judge is coming out to say who won the victory or who's going to be guilty, right? The jury comes out, the judge comes, the jury is there, the judge comes out. Now the jury gets up and they read out the verdict. Okay, that's an American system. The verdict. The judge residing. The verdict is there. Okay. So with him going out, this is now the verdict. Why they make such a strong statement? Well, firstly, to show that the verdict is here. The guilty, he's going to be found guilty. Second thing is, it shows that these guys can look back 2-3 years later and say, this is exactly how it happened. This is the exact place where. Okay, so this is historically true. This is where we shouted. This is how this whole thing played out. Not in 40, 50 years into the future looking back. Okay, but now looking back, knowing this is exactly, we can, because this happened yesterday. Literally, it happened a couple of years ago. Okay, and why is it stated in Aramaic? It's called Gabbatha, right? I mean, because I'm pretty sure, as far as it was the language, the first language of Jesus, Aramaic, so they would have, where they spread, they would have had then given a name to the stone and so they would have, as those followers of Jesus, hearing that this is now this. This is what happened. They would have come up and they would have called the stone, and they would have used the Aramaic name for the stone. And so this, amongst the first followers, orally would have been then named. The stone would have been named in Aramaic. But now for the original readers who did not understand Aramaic or was not good at Aramaic, most likely I understand nothing of it, for them, for their sake, okay, since this is now known in Aramaic as this, now it's translated from that, for their sake, he had to then therefore say, and this is for me again proof to whom ultimately he wrote and when he did write this.